Hi, I'm Anton.
Hi, I'm Vikesh, and today we are reviewing the latest production of All My Sons on the West End, directed by Ivo van Hove.
Yes, so it's like Vikesh said, All My Sons by Arthur Miller, and it's running at the Wydham's Theatre. It's going to be running until March, and the main cast are Bryan Cranston, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, and Paapa Essiedu.
Yes, exactly. And normally we don't really review theatre much since we're also theatre makers ourselves. But because obviously we don't want to kind of be picky and then, be like, but we are. But with this, it was a production that I think was an exception because we both, from the get-go, I can say, thought it was probably the best production that we saw this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that.
No,
Yes.
I wholeheartedly, I completely
Yes.
agree.
Yes, exactly. So I think I'll start off by saying that the production was highly anticipated because Arthur Miller and Eva van Hove, the marriage of both of them, has a history. We can say that, the production that Eva van Hove directed of A View from the Bridge, I think about just over a decade ago
Yeah.
at the Young Vic and then transferred to several places after. I think that production is a seminal production now and it is regarded very, very highly with Mark Strong starring back in the day. And that production, I remember watching it as well on NT Live when I was still living in Malta. And I remember that being, a production that really shook me and really affected me, like it has many, many people, and many people will consider it to be one of the best productions of A View from the Bridge, in fact, with its minimal staging as well, which was very groundbreaking at the time. Now we see a lot of that nowadays, but at the time it was very groundbreaking. And so everyone was, really anticipating this revival of All My Sons this time. And I think he did it again, basically. Evo has made another brilliant Arthur Miller piece, using a lot of, the similar techniques that he did last time. So that minimal staging is still very much present, which gives, the whole play is set around this tree and characters sit on this tree and there's very nice compositions around it and very nice lighting around it. But it is ultimately just a tree on stage. And, actors, really kind of are the focus of the play and the writing. Those two things are the things that are highlighted in the play. And he also does a really, really great choice, in my opinion, of not including an interval in this production as well, which means that you feel tension for the 2 hours, 15 minutes straight through of the play. You're not allowed to escape the reality of the situation of what's happening. And I feel like that, adds a whole other level of intensity to the experience of the play. It's like you're watching a car crash in slow motion, basically. I would describe it as that.
Yeah.
Um, and Anton, I'll let you speak a little bit about the performances maybe in the show
Sure, yeah.
and other elements.
I think, first of all, the performances all around were fantastic. Not just the main cast, but even the supporting roles were really distinct. And that's something with a lot of the smaller roles as well. Sometimes it can be easy to get lost behind the main cast, but I felt like, within the first few appearances they made, you instantly could tell, who these people are and why they're there. Um, which just goes to show how great they were. Um, I think Bryan Cranston was. I mean, it's nothing new to say. Bryan Cranston was fantastic in it. I remember seeing him in Ivo van Hove's network
Yes.
at the National, which was just as great. more. I think that, on the other hand, was a lot more technical, had a lot more technical stuff going on with live cameras and what have you. But this, like you said, Vic, was such a stripped down almost production that the actors, the acting really took, center stage then. No pun intended. So I think the amazing quality Bryan Cranston brings is his likability as the father. You're instantly in love with this guy. You want him to be your dad. You want him to be, someone who you root for. And the more you start, although if you're paying attention, you will immediately, and if you know the play, immediately start to see that this guy's shady. You're hoping, until the very end, you keep hoping that um that's not the case, that I'm missing something, which puts us in the shoes of the son, really, because that's exactly what's
Mhm.
going on with him. And the son was played by Paapa Essiedu, who again is, I think, one of the best actors of his generation. He's incredible, and again, like in this role, he really brought that sense of the character we can all connect with and root for. We're in a world of people who are making excuses constantly and trying to rationalize and justify things that are um, simply corrupt or completely not on. You have this guy who is this opposition and doesn't you know, give in to any of that. And I think with Paapa Essiedu's performance, it's easy to get on board with him. It's easy to like understand what his intention is, why he wants to do these things, and really connect with him. Then I think with Marianne Jean-Baptiste, she she brought such an interesting approach to the mother because there's a sting to her. And obviously, we know that in the script there's a sting to her towards the end of the play in particular, but you can see this from the beginning. There's this
Yeah.
very motherly attitude and I don't know, demeanor with not just with her family, but with all the other characters who come in. But
Mhm.
underneath, she's got this Lady Macbeth-like
Yeah.
quality to her, where she is. You clearly can see eventually, obviously, that she's the one in charge here. Um, and she had that from the get-go. She immediately came across as someone strong, someone who you're not going to mess around with, which was interesting because I thought it was a contrast to her introduction, because before she comes on stage, the men are just talking about how she's been distraught. They want to look after her feelings because she's almost like this little
Mhm.
fragile flower that they're talking about. And then she comes in and she's the complete opposite of everything they've been saying. And I thought that worked really, really well.
Yes, no, completely, completely. And I think there was also, apart from obviously, as you said, all of them being brilliant, there was a belief, like you believed that they were family. There was a
Yeah.
comfortable nature in the way that they acted around each other. They were allowed to just live in it. Things took their time. They could take their time. you know it wasn't the biggest difference from a view from the bridge is that a view from the bridge was very tight, while this, the silences were allowed, the long, dread was allowed in this, which made it feel quite Grecian, I would say.
Yeah.
It made it have this feeling of a Greek tragedy. It felt like you were watching something, quite epic, really, rather than domestic. And I think the setting, obviously, of the tree being there with the petals on the floor added to that. The light design added to this epicness,
And if I
this
can,
otherworldliness.
on the light
Um, you know,
design, point out just how particular that was in
yes.
building other layers and viewpoints. Specifically, there was a particular point where um, the brother comes in. to play, and it's the moment we're all dreading because we're expecting
Yes.
things to go south because of this. And the lighting for that particular act was all a light shade of blue. This sense of almost made you feel like we're at night, and everything is cold, and
Yes.
there's this this impending doom that's coming. And there's that brief tiny little period where the
Yes.
mother and the father manage to convince him that things aren't the way he sees them, that his father's wrong, that Bryan Cranston's character had nothing to do with the situation involving his dad. And the light switches to like a warm wash all of a sudden. Like we go back to daylight, we go back to the warmth, we go back to things are going to be okay, only for that slip up then to happen from Marianne Jean-Baptiste's character, and then the light switches again together with the reaction from the characters who realize what the truth actually is. And that was such a brilliant, brilliant moment.
Yes, no, for sure. There were really clever choices, I think, throughout. Not just the lighting, but also the sound combined with that as well. It has the cinematic, soundtrack kind of playing under it
Yeah,
as well, which I thought was very, very effective. Um, and yes, I mean, this is obviously an absolute kind of musty production.
yeah,
I think thematically, it was very, very relevant as well. I normally, think of other plays when I think of Arthur Miller and the relevance, but watching this play, I had watched it a few years ago, but watching it now, it felt even more relevant than ever. The fact that they were also in modern kind of clothes,
yeah,
it also added something else to it, which basically, obviously, the show is very much a post-war show and the commentary on post-war America. But here it felt different. It felt like we were talking about, the CEOs of, Amazon and Tesla and stuff. It
yeah,
felt like we were talking about, business and enterprise over human beings.
yeah.
And
This
that's
this
obviously
sort of this
some,
sort of you know Gus Malpiancha of tech
yes,
bros who just want to jump the gun on AI on social media or whatever it is without paying attention to what that costs in terms of lives, and what the repercussions are of not doing things with care, or having that sort of uh,
exactly.
you know
And there
point of
is
view.
that collective responsibility. The final, one of the final lines of the play, when he says to him, they were all my sons.
Yeah,
Oof. So that line, I've heard it being said before in other productions, but I've never felt it like in this. Like when that line is said at the end, the idea of collective responsibility, the idea that, our actions affect other people and we should be responsible for everyone around us, and the fact that we're a community, is something that has been lost by capitalism. It's something that has been lost by this individual culture. And the idea that we're all should be taking care of each other, and that final line, the way that it hits you,
yeah,
I think it makes you think a lot about the state that we're in currently, and which is exactly what Arthur Miller obviously intended, um with kind of the post-war, sentiment, and the waste of lives, the squandering of lives. And I think that's something that, is super, super relevant to the state that we're living in today.
yeah.
um yeah. So yeah, I think unless there's not anything else to say from your end,
I
Anton,
I
I think
can't think of any negatives to mention, honestly. Like I
no.
genuinely can't. I think it's one of those things we rarely believe, I think, in 10 on 10s, but this is a case of
Yes.
given the goals it set for itself, I think it managed to achieve them all.
It did.
Um
It completely did, and I can just like I know that something is good because I almost stopped breathing while watching it, and you're so like immersed in that world. And again, watching the caliber of performances that we watched, usually don't get that many in one show together. So it was just, an acting masterclass. I think for anybody who enjoys theater, but any actors out there as well, and any, theater makers out there, I think it's a real like way of learning by observing, just on every single department in the show. And I think, if there's one show to watch, starting the year, or this year, or starting next year, I think it is this one. It's
yeah.
definitely this one.
Yeah, so if you're
Yeah,
planning any theater trips to London, uh
exactly.
make sure this is the one you watch.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's been Vikesh and Anton for Critic RT.